My name is Osei-Frimpong, and you are watching a special edition of The Funky Academic, where we're going to talk about the role of local officials in interpreting the struggle, because as it stands, I'm watching too many mayors and Congress people and local officials punch down and tell the protesters to go home, instead of actually using this moment for leverage to punch up and say, like, look, my people are in the streets. And they might be justified, but I don't know if I can control them, and I'm definitely not going to shoot them. So I'm going to need you, Congress or state legislature, to backstop my budget and help me get my people jobs and make them whole. Right? So that should be what your congressional official is doing. That should be what your mayor is doing. That should be what your city councilman is doing. But instead, they're blaming you because that's what they were taught to do. And I'll say this again. That is what they were taught to do, because they were elected not because they were courageous. They were elected because they got more votes than the next person. And since governing actually is a matter of expertise, as soon as they become elected, the lobbyists start calling you, the previous campaign contribution or industry lobbyists come in and they tell them what to do and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And since they don't really know, and since they haven't gotten my quality of political education, they believe them. And right now the lobbyists are saying you need to just smack the protesters on the nose and tell them to go home and vote, preferably for you, who will do what I say, right? So that's how good people get captured, because governing does take expertise, but expertise, one, nobody really has expertise in securing Black people justice and making them whole. Like, we haven't done it. So anybody who's telling you, well, this is the way things are done, that's going to be a form of reproducing what hasn't worked. What we have done is created wealth for white people through the New Deal and securing loans and assets, pretty much, not even loans, just assets and jobs for white people. So we know how to create wealth for them, but we don't know how to do it in a world where Black and white people exist in the same nation, right? So anybody who has expertise in that actually doesn't have expertise in that. Or anyone who feigns expertise in that doesn't have expertise in that. And so we saw local capture happen. Actually went all the way up, right? So I had a friend who was with Obama the night he was inaugurated, and pretty much the moment he finished giving his inauguration speech, like, auto executives just kind of took him and say, like, all right, so this is what you should do. This is what we need you to do. So like, he was never actually his own person, because he both didn't know enough and didn't have the spine. But my problems with Obama are fodder for another podcast. But what I need people to do who are listening, who are local officials or who have the ear of local officials as it stands, is to understand that you are the interpreter of last resort for the movement. Local officials are the interpreters of last resort for the movement. So they could either use that power to smack down the people in the street who are hustling, or use their hustling as leverage to get what you need from Congress in order to govern, to make your people whole. Because if you don't get that backstop, that money from Congress, those grants from Congress and the state legislature, what ends up happening is you end up sucking up to guys like Mike Bloomberg, and we'll end up working for him, because he'll offer to give you $1 million here or $2 million there for your little local initiative. So in order to get off the teat of private charity, I'm going to need local officials to actually use this as a leverage, as a platform to do their job. And let's be honest, the right is much better about this than the left, than the Democrats are, right? So when Trump's people are out of control, he'll first say, like, well, they are out of control. You're right. They also love me. I guess you probably should just give them what they want. All right, that's the right's response to popular uprising. So that's how we get reopening on pretty much the right schedule, which is a predatory date for reopening, especially since there aren't other conditions installed. Also, yeah. So the right gets what it wants because it uses leverage. It interprets popular uprising. It interprets just uprising in general in a way that furthers their political programming. Whereas the Democrats interpret uprising as an excuse to smack down the people who are uprising. And that is bad politics. And this is from Obama all the way down to Bernie Sanders. If you tell them that their supporters are out of control, they won't say like, yeah, they are. You better do what they ask. Instead, they'll say like, yeah, thank you for that. I'll go smack down my supporters. So this is a problem. This is a problem for those. And in order to actually get over this problem, you're going to have to get used to making rich people, and on the Democratic side, a lot of rich white women, upset, because they're going to want you to smack down their supporters, because that's all they've been taught to know and care about. Like, things that make them uncomfortable must be smacked down. That's they you know, your liberal Democrats, your center of the road, middle of the road Democrats are the people who sick people on people. They sick cops on people. They're sickers. They've been known to sick. So when something's happening in their local municipality they don't like, they'll call their local officials and sick their local officials to make it go away. Make the pores go away. And we need local officials who actually reinterpret what the protesters are doing in a way that secures justice for everyone. And that's really their job. They just don't know their job or don't know how to do their job. Or really, we're not used to actually saying no to wealthy people or going through women's tears. So if they ask for something, like, you're not used to saying like, no, you need to sit down, Karen, or like, no, Bill Gates, we're not going to do it your way. Instead, we're going to tax you and we're not going to let you go through your nonprofit. We're going to tax you and then secure this as a right for all the people I need to govern. Right. So you have to protest because your talking points aren't making it to the media. And in order to protest effectively, you have to stop the functioning of whatever's functioning. Whatever people care about functioning, you got to be able to stop it. If you're just out there with a sign where everything's still functioning around you, you're not actually effective in anything. You need to stop the functioning of the machine. Right. So I support the protests. But the problem is, if the protesters aren't like perfectly trained by someone like moi, they're not going to have all of their arguments right. So I'm going to need local officials to be the people of last resort, to be the interpreters of last resort, and to do their job as the interpreters of last resort, to use that leverage in order to secure goods, and do this publicly. A lot of local politicians want to do this privately, but that's not how this has ever worked for Black people. You need to do this publicly and come out to bat for the supporters publicly and call the Congress to mat publicly on behalf of the supporters. And that's how we will win. And that's how the flow of power can actually flow up to secure justice. Because if it's not doing that, it's actually flowing down. You're doing the will of whatever paymaster is giving you your marching orders, right? So we have a budget problem at local levels and at state levels, and I'm going to need every state and local politician to use this as cover to protect the protesters. Actually, support the protesters, because they're helping you do your job. You don't have the budget to do your job right now, so you need the protesters. And you should thank the protesters for giving you the coverage to go smack the Congress into giving you what you need to do your job. All right. Thank you for your time. And we need to secure, it's going to be a couple $2 trillion to secure Black people the reparations they need. So Congress prints money. We've printed $4 trillion. We're going to make $4 trillion for everyone except Black people. So now it's time to actually print money for Black people to make them whole. All right. So thank you for your time. Thank you for the people in the street. Thank you for being in the street. Continue to be in the street. Once you go through the first backlash of oh, why are they in the street? Then if you make it a few days, it becomes, oh, why are they in the street? Oh, that makes sense. So keep an eye on this space, on this channel. Go ahead and go to thefunkyacademic.com. Look, I'm making myself down white unemployable by giving you the quality of political knowledge you need in order to secure justice for the people. So you should give in $5, $15, or $50 a month just to keep me doing what I'm doing, and I'll keep you doing what you're doing, and hopefully all of us will actually live in a better world, a beautiful world. Thank you for your time. Peace. I'm back because real quickly, if you do not interpret the rebellion in a way that secures justice for the people, then what will happen is moderates take up that space and institute half-assed solutions that will actually just further confuse and exacerbate the problems. That's very important. This isn't like, well, maybe I'll interpret the rebellion for the people. No, you need to actually do it, because if you don't do it, other people take that space and reproduce or confuse the problem, and so your kids will have to do this in another 50 years, and I don't want that. So this wasn't just a suggestion, this was an imperative, and I think you should take it as such.